Fabio, are you there? Yes, fine. Okay. Um, the important thing is, you know, that some of the arguments of a predicator, in particular of an intransitive predicator, okay, will generate at the bottom, let's say. Some other arguments generate in a higher position. This has to do with the fact of whether, let's say, they are internal arguments and external arguments. The problem is how you recognize whether some argument is internal or external. Okay? Um, because when we say, for example, that we have an intransitive verb with only one argument, such as, I don't know, the ice is melting, you know, okay? Well, um, you recognize that the ice, or I mean, we know that this is a complement, but why do we know that this occupies the complement position? Because we know that this is an internal argument. The ice is
Yes, in
not.
fact, in those cases,
Mhm.
I know the distinction between pure change state verbs, deadjective verbs, change of state verbs. So I know the subclassifications syntactically, so I can identify them easily. The problem is with those intransitive verbs of incomplete predications in which the subject is sometimes an
To begin,
experiencer.
no, to begin with, don't mention, you know, the subject. Don't mention the subject at all. In which the
Okay,
argument, let's call it,
the
okay?
argument, okay.
Because eventually something will become the subject. Whatever can become the subject, okay? Now, um, the point is that if for sure that is an experiencer will be an external argument. Of, and if it is an external argument, it will generate in specified official. Okay? For example, in the case, yes,
I believe in God, for example.
I is clearly what? An experiencer.
Yes, but I
Necessarily,
thought that it
yeah.
was an accusative.
No,
That's a
destroy
problem.
that. Destroy that. No, destroy that. No.
Okay.
Because the
Well, I
problem
stick to
is,
it.
no, the problem is that to go for the easy way out, like considering the intransitive verbs of incomplete predication will be like this or will
Yes,
be like that.
yes,
That
yes.
won't work.
That's okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
For
Same,
example,
but
yes, Gabi.
sorry, can you say that the verb is believe in, and God is an object? No.
Um,
And
in
can it be transitive in a way?
um, well, we have to go for a different, let's say, label. We cannot call it, let's say, fully transitive. Okay. The problem is that the argument, or let's say the internal argument of that one, in the case of belief, is precisely the prepositional phrase in God. Okay.
In that
So
case, but in other,
you can't say believe in as a verb all with the particle.
Um,
Like if I say, I don't know.
yes, you
Well,
can. To tell you the truth, yeah,
I
you
will.
could.
I
Yes. Think of
So
some
in
other.
that case would be transitive
Um, the problem is
or
that
midverb.
no. That's a different thing. No, that's a completely different thing. No, you know what? The problem is that that label won't work any longer. Because, for example, what about, let's say, I went to the cinema. Okay, transitive or intransitive?
intransitive.
Intransitive.
fully intransitive. Okay, careful with that, because I heard people say, I mean, some students say at some point, because Go is a TV. What? I say, my goodness, no. Okay, now intransitive. The next question will be uh, an
Jose,
accusative. Yes,
why intransitive?
because it cannot allow for the passive construction.
Ah, okay.
Okay, right? Now, the next question is an accusative and an negative.
An accusative.
Yes. So, this is one of the weirdest verbs, because for us, we tend to think of, let's say, I I went to the cinema. I is like the doer of some action. I looks like, you know, an agent, which is not. Okay. For some other types of construction that you can have with this verb. Okay. Um, Meaning, for short, if you do have an experience, for example, such as in I believe in whatever, okay, or I think whatever, and so on and so forth, okay, that experience is an external argument, and the external argument will generate in specific or visual. Okay, this is what you need to remember. Okay, or sometimes you have a clear doer of some action. Okay, the fully transitive verbs. Okay, like I am writing a sentence, I painted my house, etc., etc. Okay, in those cases you do have a doer, an agent. Okay, but for verbs of direct, let's say, transport, for example, such as go, okay, that one mm, selects a locative complement, which we cannot call a direct object, okay, and it's a complement. And the other argument, the uh, I here, is also an internal argument, okay,
So is
all right.
believe transitive? I didn't get
I,
that.
bel I believe so. I believe that.
But
Yes.
in God would be a prepositional phrase, and we said that direct object couldn't be a
In that,
prepositional phrase.
no, no, fine, yes. In that case, you need to consider, as Gabriela was suggesting, believe in altogether. Okay, prepositional. Okay,
Because it's easy when we have something like, I believe that he is guilty, for example. That's
mm-hmm,
easier.
mm-hmm, yes. So that he is guilty is what? That is clearly a direct object in traditional terms, let's say. Okay, so that will occupy the complement position of belief. Okay, the complement position of vico specifically. And the I is an experience that necessarily is it generates in specific position of V shell. Okay,
So an accusative has to be with with the theme theta role of the
with
position of subject,
every
something
other,
like that.
yes, themes, yes, for sure, for themes. Okay, and in general terms, all internal arguments. The theme is always an internal argument. Okay, Malena.
Yes, I had some problems with this sentence that says, where have the children been playing?
I considered play as an IV because I cannot see the direct object, play games, for example. And children, to me, it is a doer of an action, so it is an agent. So I consider playing as a negative. The thing is that I don't see the incorporation here in playing. You play plays?
You play, well, the point is that in English you can say you play a game, okay? But you play something that you don't mention. You don't. Okay, yes, but there is some incorporation, okay, into the verb there, okay, because it's an negative. Okay, the sentence was, sorry, can you repeat? The sentence was, we're playing in the garden or something
Where
like that.
have the
Where
where
have
have the
children?
children been playing?
Yes, in playing, exactly. So in that case, yes, you will have to resort to incorporation. Yes, exactly. Okay. The problem is that, some of them, meaning, for example, imagine that we have the children been, um, fishing. In that case, you can detect the internal argument incorporated into the lexical root of the verb, okay? Which is not the case with playing, okay? But this has to do with the usage, okay? But yes, you play a play, you play a role, you play some game or whatever. Okay.
Okay.
Such as
Thank you.
reading, for example.
Here come again, Fabi.
Such as reading.
For example, such as
The verb
reading. Yes, such as reading. Yes. If you say, um, uh, let's say, is she reading? Also, in that case, it's in an intransitive use. Okay. So typically you would have said, is she reading a book? Is she reading a novel? Is she reading the newspaper? Okay. But you can even say, is she reading? Full stop. Okay. Then there is something that should be readable. Okay. That becomes part of the lexical root of the verb. Okay. Yes, in that case, necessarily the she and she is reading. Okay, she is an agent. Okay, it's an external argument. So the fact is whether the argument is external or internal. Okay, then what you can do is try to apply some tests. Okay, in the book, you do have some 6 texts. Okay, all right, in the book by myself, I mean. There are to tell you the truth, there are way too many others. Okay, and you know what? You will be able to recognize whether they are analgatives or unacusatives when you start to compare them with the way in which you produce them in some other sentence, or the equivalent of that one in some other language or in more than one language. Okay, because what happens for all of the languages will be universal in terms of the argument selection. Okay, right?
Yes. Thank you.
What else? That's why I told you, this one, well, I don't remember the file or the couple of files, at least all of the sentences in those 2 files for sure. I recommend it that you do them all, okay, so as to get to recognize where they are, they select an internal or an external argument, or let's say sometimes 2 internal arguments, okay, right? If you have 2 internal arguments, one of them will occupy the
Jose, can
complementation.
you expand
Yes. On what?
Sorry, there was a kind
No,
of
come on,
delay
come
and
on.
we
No, no,
overlap.
no.
Can you expand a bit with any example, the analysis of the prepositional verbs and phrasal verbs? Because I think we have one example of phrasal verb in the
Okay.
Extract, but I don't get. I get the thing that is one argument or two arguments and all that you said in the article, but I tend to get confused with which is the predicate and all that.
Okay. Okay. Let me do it. For example, can you see my screen here? Here is a wet thing so far.
Yes.
Uh, give me one example of a phrase or a preposition or whatever you like. She was listening to the radio. Example. Let's compare with she was taking down notes. Okay. For example, say um, even with an intransitive one, she was waking up. Well, and then you tell me another one that you can think of. Well, in general terms, let's say in a vague way, you can say that listen to or taking down or waking up is the predicator. So that is not wrong. But specifically, when you want to specify, when you want to go for the actual predicator, you need to focus on only this one, or this one, or this one. Okay? Then, in the case of the prepositional verbs, as the one in number one, because this has got an alternative. She was taking them down. You cannot do in example number one. You cannot say something like she was listening it to. Okay? Well, so let's start with the prepositional one. In the case of the prepositional, in this case, the argument, the radio, is selected by I cannot recognize my thing here. What happens? Oh, see. Preposition to the GP. Well, I will make it short because the radio although this is a P means the radio is not an argument of listening actually, but of the preposition to. Here we'll have the verb listen. Then, what about she? Is an external or an internal argument?
External.
Then we close the vehicle.
External.
Yes. We close the vehicle and we pass on to official. This is a little v, or it's supposed to be. I will move listening from this position to this other position. No, they won't recognize my finger. Okay, no. Well, we'll have to close it and reopen it. Here we have pronoun she. VP. All of this is the lexical domain. Then we pass on to she was she prime she p pronoun she undergoes some argument movement because of two reasons: to satisfy the EPP feature of T and also to get nominative case, and on top of everything, I should very well know a complement also. Okay? So, what I mean is that
Two arguments are selected. One is the prepositional phrase, and the other is the external argument. Isn't like that?
that's correct.
Okay.
All of this, the whole
So
PP
the whole PP. Okay. Okay.
is the internal argument of listening. Okay? All right? Now, if we compare with let me see. much easier if I close this and then open it chat again. And probably brush your fingers. No. No, I'll have to reinitiate my computer in order for it to be. Well, once in a while it has
Jose,
happened.
just one question with listening to, because
Mhm,
I think
mhm.
that you can say a song was listened. O sea, you can.
Again?
What it's very difficult. Sorry,
No, no, come on, tell me. Yes. Repeat what you
because
said.
I thought that listening to is a transitive verb in a way, because you can say this song is listened by me, for example.
That is
That's why
ungrammatical.
I don't get
That is
why not.
ungrammatical. Who can give me the right version of that one?
It's
The song
Yes,
is
you-
being listened to.
Okay. Okay. Yes. This song was listened to. Yes.
It
Mm, yes.
was
Mm,
listened to.
yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
And the thing is,
So,
and then in this kind of analysis, I come up with the a prepositional phrase, and as Malena said, it's kind of why is it a direct object, but here I have an argument that it's a prepositional phrase.
it's an object, but an object.
Satellite.
Yes, it's an object. But for example,
I
when
don't
you
know.
say it is an object, but when you say, for example, uh, uh, she was listened to, or her father was listened to, or the teacher was listened to, or the radio was listened to. So the radio, his father, or whatever, or her father, etc., etc. Okay, all of these are objects of what? Of preposition to. Okay. Yes, they are objects
Okay.
to the preposition specifically. Okay, not of the verb. Okay, right? That's why.
So we're entering inside the prepositional verb. It's like
That's
the logic
correct. Yes,
inside.
yes, that's correct. Mm. And out of the realm of the prepositional phrase, you take its object, and that object can become the subject of a passive construction. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. In traditional terms, we have called this in a simpler way, listen to prepositional verb. And the rage of her father or whatever it was, direct object. But the direct object, remember,
Yes.
for example, remember when I told you at some point, for example, we did the sending to the radio, for example. When we did this thing in traditional terms, oops, oh, no, no. Okay, we said all of this is a verbal group. All of this is a prepositional verb. And this one is a particle preposition. And I told you not to write down here TV. You can write down main verb or nothing at all to make it simpler. Remember? Because precisely.
Yes, you said that TV should be listening to, not listen,
Okay, that's correct. So
because the
there,
transitive is the
yeah,
preposition.
exactly, that's the point. So we call this a GO. So this can become the subject of a passive construction. Okay, and you can say the radio was being listened to, but you extract that out of the complement, out of the preposition. This is the complement to the preposition or the object to the preposition, not of the verb. Okay? Is it clear?
Yes, yes, I'm getting into trying to understand.
Then let's compare the analysis of, I think I said she was taking note, which is not a preposition, but a phrasal verb. Taking is the predicator. Yeah. But what happens here is that taking no, not she's the latest. But taking silex as a complement the GP knows here there is a null determiner but it selects some other internal argument which is the alpha. Down because you must remember that at some point I told you that whenever two arguments can alternate with each other, such as these two, they are for sure internal arguments. That's why, for example, if you can say uh, taking taking them down, okay, for example, now them will occupy the specific position of the verb taking, and down occupies the complement position of verb taken. Can you follow? And then we will have to pass on to the V shell. Well, V, V prime, VP. In specify position of this one, I will generate she. Can you follow?
So this is because you can alter the order. You can use it. You can say take down notes, take them down.
That's correct. Okay.
I don't understand the movement of down.
No. It's not the movement. No. I mean, this is some other version. It depends on whether you have this version or this other one. Okay. You see, look at the position of these two elements here and compare them with the position of these two other elements. What I mean is that in the blue version, okay, nodes generates in the complement of eco and down in specifier of eco. In the green version, you have down occupies the complement of eco and then the specified position of eco. Okay? No, there is no movement at all there. Okay?
But what you mean is that they can switch places,
But
right?
why down is
Why down is?
above taking in the tree?
Because eventually taking undergoes some movement to the V shell.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
To tell you the truth, in either case, taking will be crossed out from this position. Okay?
Great.
Because it moves to generate the other argument, which is the external one.
So down is
Internal argument.
an internal argument in this case.
Yes, of the verb taken. Yes. The same as them or notes. Yes. It contains two internal arguments. That's why the intermediate projection here for Vico.
So in phrasal transitive verbs, we have two internal arguments, and in prepositional verbs, we have one internal argument.
Yes.
That is the prepositional phrase.
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
And we can see a phrasal verb which is intransitive. You have written.
Come again in the
That I think you wrote an example of an intransitive verb.
one intransitive one.
A phrasal intransitive.
Yes. For example, I think that it says she was waking up. Okay. Well, here we will have different things. Let's say with the intransitive ones, you have some problems. She was waking up, or for example, she was another one, another intransitive one. She was oops. She was passing away. Or can you think of another one?
Drew up.
She grew up. Another one.
Sit down.
Okay. Yes. Yes, that one. Yes. Right. I sat down. I was sitting down. Because the intransitive phrasal verbs, again, we have the problem. Let's say the particle in all of them will occupy the complement position. The question is where we generate this she. For example, in number 3, is this she an external or an internal argument?
Internal. But no, number 3. Oh, no, sorry.
Yes, number 3. Internal or external?
External.
External. No, wake up. When you wake up, for example, you just wake up. I mean, it's something. Yes, it's something that happens to you. Okay. And she was passing away. She.
Internal.
And she sat down.
Ah, that was doubt. I think it's internal, but I'm sure.
No, it's external. She stood up.
And what about falling?
Falling down. Okay.
Falling down.
It's like this.
Oh no. Okay.
She was falling down. But she is internal. Okay. What should be? Linking this down.
And can we think about another phrasal
Well,
verb?
this one.
Intransitive phrase.
Number 6. If the moment you say this is an external, this is a negative one. Okay. And she sat down, or let's say she stood up, or things like those. Okay. This she is the doer of some action. Okay.
Okay. And if I say she was sitting, is
no, it's the same thing.
she
No,
was
it's the same thing.
sitting
No, exactly
same
the same.
thing? Okay.
Yes. That has to do with, I mean, that has nothing to do. I mean, this is the tense construction, actually, okay? Because the auxiliary generates higher up in the position, okay, in the functional domain. Well, the point is that, in the intransitive phrasal verbs, again, now what you have to think of is, well, the other argument apart from the particle, I mean, is an internal or an external argument. Okay? If it's an internal argument, it will occupy the specified position of uh, t, of v, sorry, of v core. If it's an external argument, it will occupy the specified position of the shell. And one more that I will leave for you to think of is, what about if you have a phrasal prepositional verb, such as she let's say looks to her father. I will leave this for you to try to do it on your own, and then we will discuss it eventually next week. Okay? But probably you can recognize that this particle up is an adverb. Okay? This other particle, the second particle, is a preposition. It is the preposition to that selects the object, her father. Okay? Can you follow?
Yes.
Well, is it clear now?
Yes.
Apart from this, any other doubts?
Could
You
you
see
go?
that what is very important is what happens in the lexical domain, because there are some other parts. Yes, two. I don't know. Tell me, come on.
Oh, there's some delay. No, I wanted to go on or talk about the where to generate the adjuncts because I still get messed up with it. I can't really find the the rule or the idea.
Well, the problem of an adjunct is that, for example, okay, if you say she was reading a book, let's say at home in her bedroom, let's say last week on Friday, big, no, let's see. Right, up to that point, that would be enough. So you have, and you can go on and on and on and on and on. What happens here is that this is an adjunct. This is some other adjunct. This is some other adjunct. This is some other adjunct. And so on and so forth. Theoretically, the number of adjuncts, and this is what is crucial, is that they are unlimited in number. Here I have chosen 4, okay? And it doesn't sound that weird, okay? But you have, for example, in that file, many other adjuncts, which are clearly, let's say, more, let's say, strange cases, because you have with, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 adjuncts. Theoretically, they have no limit. Now, what is it that we can say of as regards the generation of adjuncts? Adjuncts, or let's say, whenever we mention elements attached, this is the technical term. These elements are attached to something. Have no limiting number. In terms of the generation, generate by duplicating category. So that, let's see, for example, if we have 4 adjuncts, such as in sentence number 9, we will have, let's say, n plus 1, meaning 5 labels that are the same. In this case, we have 5 flippies. So that every adjunct has got the same mother as its sister. So, if we think of, let's see, I don't know, let's take, I don't know, this tree that we started to draw here that has nothing to do with the adjuncts. What is the sister of this determiner, of this null determiner?
The noun?
The noun nodes. And what is the mother of the determiner, of the null determiner?
The determiner phrase.
Yes. What is the sister of the alpha down?
V prime?
Yes. And its mother is VP. And so on and so forth. So in these sentences in which we don't have an adjunct, the mother and sister of every item are different. You see, every item has got a different element as its mother and as its sister. Okay? Well, this is what happens most of the times. In this other case, in which we have she was reading a book at home in her bedroom last week on Friday. Okay. Then, well, please have it at hand so that I don't have to scroll it up and down, you know. Okay. So I will select, first of all, for reading, the internal argument, which is a book. Okay, reading, and here I have the whole GP epoch. No other internal argument here. Then I will close the VCO VP. Yeah. Reading. Here the GP. What's good? In this other case, I got how many adjuncts? 4. So then what I have to do is a duplication of this category. So that I have got 5 VPs, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this position, I will generate the very first PP, I think it was at home. Okay, the PP at home. Now, if you look at what happens here, the mother of PP, the mother of the prepositional phrase is VP, and its sister is VP. You see the idea of having the same mother and sister. Okay, here we write down, let's say, the whole PP at home in a shorter version, probably.
And how can we distinguish that we have to duplicate VP and not any other element? Or how can we know when to duplicate a particular constituent?
Okay, that's a very good question. Okay. Well, because you need to think of the type of adjunct that you have, which can be of very different types. Let's say adjuncts, or let's say elements, can be adjoined, so as not to repeat, adjunct, but we can say elements can be adjoined, so as not to sound redundant and change adjuncts for elements, but never mind. Okay, elements can be adjoined to a verb, to a noun, to a preposition, let's say, theoretically, to everything. For example, in sentence number 9, at home and in her bedroom and last week are verbal adjuncts. These have to do with where she was reading a book or when she was reading a book, or what for in other case, etc., etc. Okay, but compare with, let's say, a long book. Long is referring to book, is being adjoined to the noun book. Okay. Um, or, for example, what about if I add here some other elements such as right in the bedroom? This adverb is adjoined to what? To the preposition.
Preposition.
Okay, so it has to do with what is some element is an adjunct to what is referring to. Right is not referring to the reading. Okay, you see, so there can be a verbal adjuncts or prepositional adjuncts or nominal adjuncts or well, some other things as well. Okay.
In that case, right should duplicate in, so a P or the whole PP.
The whole PP. Yes. You will have to duplicate the maximal projection, or in some cases, you can also duplicate the intermediate projection. Okay.
Sorry, what happens in sentences like he died poor or she ate the meat raw?
Uh-huh. Okay. Yes, that's right. That is a problem. Yes. Because this poor, for example, in Shida poor, is some additional predicator. Okay. In this case, in that construction, what we have is two predications put together. Means she was poor when she died. Okay. So we'll have to do something else. Okay. Uh,
Sorry,
yes.
Jose, could you please write or draw the analysis or the tree for right in her bedroom, because I cannot get the idea how to do it. I mean, because you said that we have to duplicate the whole
Okay.
PP.
Okay. Let's do the following. Oh, it's 11. So, give me a second.
Okay.
So far, we have seen the actions. Have we seen the questions?
Yes.
Yes. And to tell you the truth, there is something that I'm more worried about, which is something that will appear in every exam. Okay, so probably we can do this, later on, or I can show you in a screen, and you have to deduce that on your own. But probably, let's say, you will have to duplicate the preposition, but because I don't want to fall behind with something, which is the relative clauses. But let me see, because I don't like the way I'm working without the screen recognizing my finger. So let me do the following. Let's see whether we can, because otherwise it takes too long. Yes. Let's see whether I can restart my computer, okay, and let's reconnect again, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see whether it works better. hear me now? Are you all back?
Yes.
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 Let me see. Where is Mariano? Here. Oh. Can you record, Mariano, or not? Were you recording before? Ah, okay. Well, just to let you know, for example, uh, right on the, I don't know what,
In her bedroom.
in,
Yes.
uh, well, you see, this is much more dynamic now. Okay, now we have the preposition in the
You're not sharing.
Sorry. No, yeah. I should in a minute. Now. Okay?
Yes, okay. Now we can see.
PP, and then if you have an adverb which is an adjunct to the preposition, for example, right is a pre-modified in traditional terms is a pre-modified adverb to the preposition. Okay, so we can duplicate that PP here as a right. What we're saying here is that right has not been selected by. Look at this. Right has the very same mother and sister. The mother of right, of the other right, is PP, and its sister is also PP. Okay? This tells us that this is not an argument at all, but an adjunct. It has been adjoined to what? To the preposition. Okay? Meaning, if we can take it away, it won't affect the meaning of the whole thing at all. Okay? Then, so this is what we say by adjuncts, but that to adjoin something. As opposed to that one, for example, this element, let's say, I don't know, this GP is not adjoined to the preposition. This is an argument of the preposition, meaning what? It has been selected by the preposition. In the other case, the adverb has not been selected by the preposition. Okay? When we say select, that X selects Y, okay, what we are saying is that in order for X to acquire its whole meaning, it requires Y, the other element. But this is how selection works. Okay? In the case of an adjunct, the adjunct is giving you additional information. Okay? And then all of this is the complement of I don't know what. Okay? Mm. Mm.
So Jose, in the no, that in the case of right, it's not P prime and then PP. It's PP, and we write it as a join.
Exactly. If you
Okay.
were an intermediate projection for, because in the previous versions, by Chomsky up to the 80s, up to the 86 actually, you have Chomsky did like this, okay, or even in graph for 1997, for example, you have it like this: P, P prime, P, P, okay, and he said, okay, we can insert right here. So kind of accommodating this word, okay? But later on, it was recognized that this element, okay, because what we are saying in this other version is that the preposition selects the whole GP here in complement position, but also something in specified position, which is not the case, okay? That's why this is an adjunct. The right version is this one, okay? Or for example, when we say she was reading a book, okay? Well, reading, a book, I mean, nothing else. But what about if I say she was reading an interesting long book, okay? And you can use as many pre-modifiers as you want to, for example. Then the noun book, in that case, will have an MP, well, as many agents as you happen to need. Okay, for example, let's suppose that we have only one agent. Let's say long here, adjective long. It's a nominal adjunct. Look at the mother of the adjective long. It's noun phrase. And its sister is also noun phrase. This
And
tells
if I
us
say a long book about cats or whatever.
okay. That's a very good one. The more technical form, it will be like this. Because we have long and about cats, two items. Okay? Um, so, in this case, in pre-modified position, that's why to the left, okay, I will insert the adjective long that has the same mother and sister. To the right, now, I will write down the whole preposition about cats.
Okay, great.
This is the correct analysis or the most correct analysis. But to tell you the truth, whenever we have post modifiers, okay, because this is kind of a weird thing. I'm not that much interested in this part, So we will do something, kind of a simplified version. I mean, if you want to do it like this, okay, you can. But I will do it in some other way so as to simplify this tree, okay? So I will write down the noun book. We will assume that about cats, preposition about is a complement. Okay, let's make it simpler. Okay, about cats. Okay, noun phrase, and then we will have noun phrase, and this case we will have adjective long. So this is a kind of simplified version of the actual tree. Why? Because to tell you the truth, I'm not that worried about adjuncts. Because if you have a look at the sentences in which you have sentences with adjuncts, you have some, I don't know, some noun that has, I don't know how many pre-modifications, how many post-modifications. So you have kind of a longish thing. Much more interesting than that, I am interested in something else, which is what we're going to turn to now. Okay, I mean, you won't have, I mean, you will have once in a while one agent here or there. Okay, and even, at some point you can very well ask me, yes, shall we do this as an agent, yes or no? Okay, and I will let you know, even in an exam. Okay, right?
Okay, okay.
Many most of the times we will go for the simplified version, but something much more important than that is what to do with the relative clauses. Relative clauses, for sure, you will have them in every single grammar 2 exam. Well, actually, in my case, even in grammar 1 exams. Okay. So, how? Uh, Remember that relative clauses will have to be adjoined. So, unfortunately, in this case, we will have to adjoin some relative clause to something. Okay, so adjoined to an antecedent. Okay. The other thing that you will have to remember is that every single relative clause will involve WH movement. This is what I want you to very well, very well remember. Okay. Example. Um, let's say she was reading a book. By the way, you have to read a book, right? She was reading a book. You can have in all 5 different possibilities for this.
Sorry,
Yes,
she was reading a book that she bought or he bought.
her father, I meant to say.
Oh.
The other versions probably will change them. Let's focus on the very first sentence and let's see how many possibilities we can have for this sentence. We could have said she was reading a book which I thought about, or even she was reading a book about a boat. The meaning in all of them is exactly the same. Okay? Or for example, let's say I don't know. What about if the antecedent is not a book, but a person, let's say, she loves the person that gave her a book, probably it's her father. Well, basically, the first three sentences mean exactly the same. The number 4 and number 5 also mean the same. Okay, so we have different possibilities. Remember what I told you, that all of the relative clauses involve what kind of movement?
WH movement.
Meaning what? For sure in the relative clause we will have C, C prime, CP. At some point to the left of the relative clause we'll have an intermediate projection, because WH movement means that some element lands in specific position of C. Okay? Then, you know what? In some versions, we have this connector. That. In some other versions, we have some WH words. And in some other version, we have nothing. Okay? Well, in every case, in all of these versions, 1 to 6, and in all of the, let's say, sentences or the clauses that are relative clauses, in all of them, absolutely in all of them without any exception, that generates in this position. Some other element is moved from somewhere, okay, onto this position. I don't know whether a pronoun or an alpha, well, etc., etc. Okay, but it's a WH word that I move here. Okay. Now, this thing will happen in all of the sentences that we have there. Okay, now I will draw 1 or 2 trees. But let's see. Remember that in all of these versions, for example, in version 1, you do have this, that. No problem. You don't have a WH word there that you can see. You don't get to see it, you don't get to hear it because you don't pronounce it, but you know what? It is there. In number 2, you get to see which, the WH word, and not that. But you know what? That is there. And the which is also there. And in some other cases, you don't see either. For example, in sentence number 3, we don't have either that or which. Okay? This is because, you know, there is a rule that is called the that trace effect. which tells you that in relative clauses, actually in some other types of clauses as well, but let's start with the relative clauses. In relative clauses, that in head C position and it's specify cannot coexist. Meaning what? We will have to cross out one or the other, or even both of them. And this crossing out will happen at PF level. If you remember, or I think that I did mention, no, I'm not sure about anything. But for Chomsky, there is a chart, I think in the printed version of the book, in the actual version it's on page 26. In the version that you have of the book appears on page 85, I think. Okay, well, the important thing is that for a derivation of a sentence, we have the most important part is syntax. Syntax has to do with the word order. In order for you to have the syntax, in order for you to be able to, let's say, put the words in a specific order, okay, we have to feed the syntax with the words, with the lexicon. But the lexicon is something that, as time goes by, we keep on learning new and new and new and new words, more words, okay, all the time. This is being expanded throughout all of our lives, okay? But the syntax, or all of the rules of syntax, for a specific language, let's say of a native speaker, are already there by the age of 30 months or so, 2 years and a half, and the child, has already generated all of these rules. Then there are a couple of so-called interfaces which are called the PF level and the LF level, have to do with, for example, phonological form. Of course, all of this happens in your brain, in our brains, very quickly. Phonological form, and the other is the, let's say, the lexical form, the semantic component, okay? In order for you to understand what we say, okay? But these are interfaces. For example, some people may have some problems. Imagine that I have some problem that I speak like this all the time, but you can very well understand what I'm saying. Okay? Meaning, because of the word formation it's in their reposition. Understand what I mean? Okay? Or some other people have some problems with their verb. Okay, you must have heard, some people speaking like el rector de la universidad, or I don't know, with some problem of articulation. okay, which can be corrected, but in some cases, people, did not correct that when they were very young, and they live with that all their lives. But let's see whether we can do, let's say, one of these sentences, or probably, let's say, oops, these 10 minutes that we still have, say, probably the three of them together. You recognize, can you all follow so far? Okay, well, you recognize that in all of these cases, we do have a relative clause. The fatherboard is a relative clause referring back to the antecedent book. Okay, and the same holds true for the one in blue in the second case, or the one with no element introducing it at all. Okay, well, so all of these sentences syntactically are generated in exactly the same way. Syntactically, meaning what? We have, her father bought something. Okay, so we have, for example, buy, no other internal argument, but we do have an external argument. So by undergo head-to-head movement, and here I will have, well, I will simplify it a bit, okay? Just to don't waste time, not to waste time with this part. The father bought, etc. Now, further, what is the antecedent of, let's say, the relative clause?
A book.
The noun book, which is some element. So the antecedent is some which here. In this other version, okay, the antecedent of that gave her a book is the noun person. So I will have to generate some, let's say, who, not a which, but a who. Okay, because the person is an animate entity. Okay, in a specific position. Okay, I don't know where. Okay, well, but going back to this. Here we'll have pronoun which won't remain in this position, but will have to undergo some kind of WH movement. Okay, so once we finish with the lexical domain, we pass on to the functional domain, in which we have TT prime TP. Here I will have some nullity with an EG. This poor thing cannot remain in that position, so it becomes byte through affix hopping here. And later on we get to recognize that it's not byte but bought. Okay? And then further to undergo argument movement, to satisfy the EPP feature and also to get nominative case. As all of this was a relative clause, we said that there should be some kind of WH movement, meaning what? That we will have C, C prime, CP. Always. In a relative clause, always. In head C, we will always have the complementizer that. and in specified position of C, I have this element.
Specified position of C prime.
Actually, it's the specified of C. By extension, is the specified position of C prime. The specified is of C. C is the head. Okay. Whenever you say the complement of whatever, the specified of whatever, you usually go for the head. The complement of this head, the specified of this head. Okay.
And Jose, Sorry.
Give me a minute. I haven't finished. So, you know what? Remember the first three sentences, which were exactly the same in terms of meaning. Okay? These sentences mean exactly the same thing. But the problem is that, you know what? Because of what I said before, these two things here, these two things here, the head C position and its specifier, cannot coexist in a relative clause. Meaning what? I will have to either cross out one of them, probably which, or the other, probably that, or even both of them. But this happens after the syntactic derivation, after the syntactic generation. Meaning this happens at an interface, at PF level, when our brains, once our brains have generated this clause in a specific position, okay, meaning with a specific word order, okay, and then before pronouncing them, we'll have to cross out one of these elements. Then, in sentence number 1, I will have to cross out this which. In sentence number 2, I will have to cross out the second. And in sentence number 3, I will have to cross out the two of them. That's why you have the 3 different renderings. She was reading a book that had father bought, or she was reading a book which her father bought, or she was reading a book her father bought. Understand?
So that's why it's not null, it's crossed.
Exactly. It's crossed at PF level because of that trace effect. So let's do sentence number 2. Okay. If we have the second version, the sentence that we are given is sentence number 2, then we will cross out this element. And this happens at PF level. Okay? Then, this CP is, we said, remember, adjoined.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, what is PE level?
PF level, phonological level, phonological form. PF stands for phonological form. Okay.
Is it what is pronounced?
Yes.
Isn't it?
Mm-hmm. The way it means is the part of the brain that governs your articulation of the sounds, let's say. Okay. That's why, for example, if I got some problem in some part of my brain, in some cases, it can be the case that I can pronounce something like this, to speak always like this. For example, the sibilants, there are way too many people that have got problems with their sibilants. Not necessarily, that this problem is located in the brain, but in the connection within the brain and the articulatory system. Okay? But somewhere, never mind. Okay? Meaning, in some cases, these problems can be corrected, or in most of the cases, these problems can be corrected. Not in all of the cases, but in most of the cases, probably, I don't know that much, but probably I assume that, let's say, 70-80% of the cases, these problems can be corrected. Okay? With some effort, with some training. Okay? Not in all of the cases.
So we just cross out the one that we selected. I mean,
the one that you don't pronounce, the one that you don't pronounce, exactly. The one that you don't pronounce, exactly. Or even both of
no name
them,
whatsoever.
you have version 3. No. Okay. Why is that? Because of that trace effect. You need to remember that. Okay. Then, all of these clause, which her father bought, okay, but you see this, which generates somewhere else in the lexical domain.
Jose, sorry, what's the name of the movement of which argument movement?
WH movement.
WH, okay.
WH movement.
If something lands in specified position of C, that's an instance of WH movement. Okay? Well, but how do we adjoin this to the noun? Well, remember what we said, that we will have, if we adjoin some element, meaning this relative clause is an adjunct to a noun, to an antecedent, so I will have the same mother and sister here, MP, MP, and the N book. Okay? You see that mother of CP is NP, noun phrase, and its sister is also noun phrase. And then we will have determiner A or D, I don't remember. The book. Or
a book.
Well, a book. Maybe. And then this is selected by, I don't know, some other element. Reading.
Reading.
Okay.
Is there any differences between defining and non-defining relative clauses?
Well, some people make a difference between them. Mean in the position in which they are joining them. Okay, but we should need, like, say, like some other cause. Probably for the time being, let's assume that there is not. Okay. Otherwise, it will take us, I don't know, much more time. But probably, yes, there should be some difference. Okay. Let's make it in a simplified version like this. Yes.
Why do we have to duplicate the noun phrase? I don't get that.
Because this clause is adjoined to its antecedent, meaning what is an adjunct to the noun book.
Is it considered an adjunct?
Yes. Relative clauses always. That's why they have the same mother and sister.
I don't get why don't we duplicate only the noun book and we duplicate the noun phrase? Perhaps it's a very silly question, but
no, it's not a silly question. No. Well, the problem is that in English you cannot see it that well, but you know what? it has been shown that what you duplicate is either the maximal projection or the intermediate projection, not the noun, not the head of it. Okay.
What happens
Well,
with verbless relative clauses?
with
Verbless relative clauses.
Yes. For example,
I don't know. I think post modifiers can be considered quite a relative
they
clauses
are.
because
Yes,
they
they
reduce the
are.
scope of reference of the antecedent.
Absolutely, they are. Theoretically, they should be. Okay? So, you know what? That's why Chomsky publishes in 1995 what is called the minimalist program. Meaning, if you want to go in detail, okay, you will have to consider way too many elements that are null for all of the post modifiers to a noun, actually. Okay? Meaning, if I tell you, the book under or on table is about grammar. Okay, on that table is actually a reduced relative clause. It's the same as saying the book which is on that table. Okay, so you have to write down way too many other elements and eventually write them down as null elements. Okay, or we will go for something much simpler following Chomsky, and we'll say, okay, let's assume that this is just a PP, incomplete position of the noun and just that. Okay.
Jose, I have a question.
Mhm.
Does this that trace effect happen with every single relative pronoun or relative adverb? For example, I don't know, with whose or with where?
Yes.
Okay.
Whenever you have a relative clause, for sure.
All right. Good.
Yes. Whenever you have a relative clause, yes, it will happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
If we have whose book, we move whose book altogether, not only
Yes.
whose.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah, exactly. Whose book is all, let's say, by, let's say, instead of this, you will have whose book is a GP. Okay. And then you will move all of these elements to the specific position of C. Okay. I know a person, I know an author whose book was fantastic. Okay. So the whole relative clause, whose book was fantastic, has an antecedent, which is the non-person. Okay. Right. But that will have to do with, you know what? I insist on this. What happens in the lexical domain. That's why this part is what you will have to very well know. This is the key to everything. The rest will be tiny details, okay, on the movements, and you will have to be able to sort them out on your own. So let's do the following. For next time, try to do some of the sentences on the file there with the relative clauses, and we will correct them all together next week, together with the other things that are pending, okay, of the actions or whatever else. Okay? But at least probably you can give it a try, okay, to the analysis of the relative clauses. Okay? Clear?
Okay. Shall we hand in something or not?
Whenever
Just to check.
If you want me to check out something, probably you can, okay, but not necessarily, probably, you know, one or two well, okay, but not necessarily that you divide everything together and you send me, you know, a number of things, because I have to, you know, catch up with the other thing that you sent me before, okay? But I mean, if you're in doubt and if you want me to correct something, you can, okay? But try to do, you know, some of them, okay, and then we will correct them next week, okay, and so that we don't fall behind and we see the problems that you've encountered. Okay, is it clear? Well then, I think that we can call it a day now and see you on Friday.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.